ইনশাআল্লাহ ভাই, আপনাকে একটা সুখবর দিচ্ছি।
দেশে আপনার প্রপার্টি বিক্রি নিয়ে চিন্তিত? আমরা আছি আপনার পাশে। ইনসাইট সলিউশনস, আপনার চাইতেও বিশ্বস্ত। সেল সেল সেল, রিট বাজারে সামার সেল। 2 অগাস্ট সোমবার থেকে 18 অগাস্ট রবিবার পর্যন্ত চলবে এই মেগা সেল। 5 কেজি গরুর মাংস 21.99, 10 লিটার সানফ্লাওয়ার অয়েল 9.99, কাতল মাছ এনি সাইজ 2.99 কেজি, দেশি মুসুরের ডাল 20 কেজি 19.99, রুই মাছ আন্ডার 5 কেজি 12.99 ইচ, শিয়াল মাছ আন্ডার 5 কেজি 18.99 ইচ, দুইটি বোয়াল আন্ডার 3 কেজি 12.99, দুইটি আইড় আন্ডার 3 কেজি 16.99, ইলিশ মাছ 1000 to 1200 গ্রাম 12.99। এছাড়া অন্যান্য পণ্যেও থাকছে অবিশ্বাস্য সব অফার। বিশাল ফ্রি কার পার্কিং এর সুবিধা নিয়ে মনের সুখে বাজার করতে চলে আসুন ব্রিড বাজারে। ব্রিড বাজার, 4 শার্টন স্ট্রিট, লন্ডন E1 0BB।
Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to the show. You're watching Channel S. Let's talk with me, Anwar Mir. We are discussing today Bangladesh and what's going on, the very dynamic, the very fluid situation that's taking place at the moment in Bangladesh. With me are a panel of experts. I've got some guests who are going to be discussing this particular matter. Allow me, please, to introduce you to them. I have firstly Dr. Shaukat Ali, Professor of Business and Finance at Long Island University, all the way in America. And I also have Shamsher Mubin Chowdhury Bikram, who's the former foreign secretary and ambassador to a number of countries, including Germany, Vietnam, and the United States of America, Bangladeshi ambassador. We also have Dr. Gujan Das, senior process engineer of Farmeron UK. And I'm going to be joined by, I've got someone else, I think, Dr. Jyoti, who's joined us. I don't have Gundan Dashi Jyoti, sorry, Senior Process Engineer, Farmeron UK. I think that's yourself. Thank you very much to my panelists for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, as usual, this is an interactive show. If there are any questions or opinions that you'd like to place and share your opinions, feel free to do so. The number will shortly be at the bottom of your screens, and we would love to hear what your take on this is. Allow me to begin by asking Dr. Gunjan Das Jyoti what her take is on the current situation in Bangladesh.
Good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me to your show. What I personally feel like, what I have been facing recently, especially with the protests we had of the weekend we had in the UK, a lot of my friends, when I would share something openly on social media, they would say, hey, are you sure if it's real? We think Bangladeshi Hindus are being used as a ploy by the political parties, or it's just the Hindus are attacking each other to represent something. Or some people say it could be very much that it's India releasing some fake news or fake images, etc. And all we're doing is being brainwashed by sitting in Britain. We're being brainwashed and we're just sharing it and without actually checking. What I personally have faced was that, yes, not everything is real. However, certain things that go through, you can actually see it's true, it's real. Some of the areas of Chittagong that were affected, when I spoke to my cousins or my nearest and dearest ones, they did say not everything was affected. So a lot of the news was fake, but also at the same time that the pain that when others were sharing, it was not fake, it was true. So there was a fine line that I personally had to sit through and sort of think, is this real? Is this fake? And it was a hard time. It still is a very difficult moment right now for all of us to think, what is happening? What will happen? How is it going to go through in the future?
So you've actually spoken to a number of people in Bangladesh, have you, who have told you firsthand about the experiences that they're facing?
Yeah, indeed.
And how widespread do you say that this problem is, the attacks on minorities?
I must admit, so the conversations I had were one of my aunts who lives in Rangpur, she said it was pretty bad. It was really, really bad there. However, when we spoke in Chittagong, the rural areas were not safe, but in the main cities, in the metropolitan cities, and main town in Chittagong, it seemed like my family did not even face anything because, yes, before anyone breaks in or does any sort of, before they even approach attacking, it seems like there is a bit of guarding done by others, or there are some people that are actually there to help you and watching out for you.
Well, let's break this down a little bit. Are you suggesting that minorities are being targeted by virtue of the fact that they are members of minority communities, or are they being targeted because they are perceived, subjectively perhaps, to have an alignment with the Awami League? Because anyone who appears to be aligned with the Awami League is a prima facie target. Are you saying that they're specific targets by virtue of the fact that they are of the membership of the minority group?
I think it's direct. I personally have faced both. It's a mixture of both.
Well, how can you face it? You're based in the United Kingdom. What do you mean you faced it?
As in when I speak to my family members and my friends. So what I personally hear is it's a mixture of both. I can't say it is only being targeted at Hindus only, but at the same time, I can't just say it's being targeted at Hindus that are, or at some point were associated with Awami League. It's a mixture of both.
Sure. Okay, let me tell you this. The BBC's fact-checking unit and BBC Bangla have analysed several posts online and found them to be misleading or false. And I'm not suggesting that there are not incidents targeting Hindu minorities, but what the proposition may well be that it's not a direct targeting because of the fact that they are Hindus. It is because of the fact that they are perceived to be aligned with the Awami League. And secondly, a lot of the viral videos may not be as accurate, but more misleading. Let me just carry on telling you. Many of the accounts, and this is the BBC fact-checking service, many of the accounts sharing the false or unverified claims were from India, which is the world's largest Hindu majority country and right on Bangladesh's western border. One viral social media post falsely claimed that the home of Hindu cricketer Liton Das had been set on fire by radical Islamists. However, it has since been confirmed that the house burned belongs to former Bangladesh national team captain Mashrafi bin Murtuza. Another viral post alleged that Islamic mobs from Bangladesh attacked a temple with a video showing a fire near Chittagong's Navagrada Mandir. Despite the alarming footage, it was evident that the temple itself remained undamaged. Photos obtained by BBC Verify revealed that the real target was an Awami League office situated behind the temple. Temple official Swapon Das confirmed to the BBC that on August the 5th, chairs and tables for the party office were set on fire behind the temple. Images also show that protesters featuring Awami League leaders were burned in the incident. Political analyst Zahid Rahman said attacks were politically driven, not religious, because traditionally Hindus have supported Ms. Hasina's party. Can I just ask you this? Would you agree with me that Bangladesh largely not only accommodates minorities, including Hindus, but has a warm relationship with Hindus? And the fact that there are a number of social media posts suggesting that there are attacks persecuting Hindus, perhaps they are amplified and artificially embellished. Would you agree with that?
To some extent, but not fully. Because, yes, what you said is true, but they're also very small. Like when I went to Bangladesh earlier this year, there were some small temples that were on smaller roads, very little ones. Well, some of them, when I think on Wednesday morning when I woke up, I saw footages that they were damaged.
Okay. Let's go to Mr. Shamsher Mubin Chowdhury. Mr. Chowdhury, thank you for joining us. May I please ask you what your take is on the current situation in Bangladesh? The political situation.
Thank you for inviting me. I think there is some interference, some outside voices coming in. As I said, thank you for inviting me to this program. And are you wanting me to tell you about the general situation or what?
Yes,
you
the
discussed
general,
with
the general
Ms. Kuntal
political
Adas?
situation, please. Yes.
Well, you also referred to some BBC fact check reports, I think, and there's one case of a rape. And it appeared that this is a rape that took place in some city in India some time ago. And that has been photoshopped and placed here. Now, I'm not saying that there has been incident. There has been many incidents. And almost an equal number, if not more, are engineered, photoshopped, etc. Let me, Janidas very correctly referred to some issues in Rangpur and Chittagong and all that. I'm from Sylhet. Some of the oldest temples in Bangladesh are in Sylhet. Even in my village, there are some very, very large and old temples. And I can say that with full responsibility that there has not been a single incident in anywhere in Sylhet. And on the contrary, in my village, the ordinary villagers have gone and mixed with the temple leaders. When I was doing elections myself, and that was, as you all know, literally fake election, fraud election. I was a victim of total fraudulent election. And I had good relations, but it's true that I did spend a lot of time in villages which has Hindu majority. And in spite of the assurances and warmth they showed me at the meeting, they all en masse voted for the Awami League. Or, as the results were fake, their names were stamped in the ballot box by the Awami League and the civil administration. So I think one has to see the recent developments in a much larger and a longer context. The Awami League, since 2009, 2011, actually more accurately, when they abolished the non-party caretaker system of government that was widely accepted by the people of Bangladesh, because the lack of trust between the two major parties is as bad as it can get. I mean, sitting in London, you wouldn't even imagine how bad it is. They don't just trust each other. So that is why we had the system of non-party election time caretaker government only for 90 days, whose only job was to conduct a fair election. And the members of that interim or caretaker government would be chosen by the major political parties and come to a consensus on that. And that worked well. And that system was incorporated into our constitution because of the demand by the Awami League itself in 1994, 95, and 96. And this was incorporated constitution in 1996. Now, at that time, the Awami League was carrying out this very violent demonstration, processions, and political movement against an elected government, the oust the elected government. Their allies were the Jamaat Islami. This may sound shocking to many, but it is true. There are photographic evidence of the Awami League leadership sitting face to face with the Jamaat top leadership, whom they eventually can be executed because of their role in 1971. And as a freedom fighter, I think that punishment is due to them. I wouldn't deny that. They collaborated against with the Pakistani army, including the rapes of Bangladeshi women, killing hundreds of thousands of Bangladeshi people, torching Bangladeshi villages, etc., etc. I have seen this myself during the war.
With respect, Mr. Chaudhry,
so in the longer context, there is no democracy, there is no accountability in this country, there is no transparency in this country. There's cronyism, there's rampant corruption, and I would strongly condemn any kind of communal violence in Bangladesh, whether it is done in recent times or it was done during the Awami League government in Ramu, in Narshandi, in Kumilla, in a number of places.
If we move on from the communal violence issue and perhaps focus on the current state of play in terms of the politics of the on the ground, what's your take on what's happening at the moment? I mean, you've got Professor Yunus, who's at the helm of this administration. What confidence do you have that there will be a pathway towards free and fair elections and some restoration of democracy?
Well, I didn't get your name, sir, so I would have to...
yeah, sure. Anwar, yeah.
Okay, Anwar. Let me say this, that when it came to governance in Bangladesh, we actually hit rock bottom, the lowest level. It was abyss. And so the only way to go now is up. We cannot go any lower than what we already have over the last 10, 12 years. So I have great trust in Professor Yunus and the team that he has chosen. And history, I guess, will record that this perhaps could be a big opportunity, if not the last one, to restore the values that we fought for in 1971 for Liberation War, which was a non-communalism, a non-communal Bangladesh, a democratic Bangladesh, a united Bangladesh, where there will be no gap between the rich and the poor. I mean, people are siphoning up millions of dollars out of Bangladesh, the rich people, and the poor don't have enough money to buy groceries for 2 meals a day for their family. The killings of the students, 300 students were killed in cold blood. I mean, I wish you had seen, Anwar, this telephone video being checked by the Home Minister, the former Home Minister, the Inspector General of Police, and the local police officer saying, "Sir, what can we do? We shoot at them, we kill one, he falls, but the rest keep on moving towards us." I mean, this is on record.
Yes, it is.
This is the extent to which the barbarism went to Bangladesh in the last couple of weeks.
Well, it seems to be the case.
But we hope that it changes.
Sure. It seems to be the case that Professor Yunus does mean business. I mean, you will have heard of the arrest today, in fact, of Mr. Anisul Haq and Salman F. Rahman, Mr. Abdul Qadir, all of them who are very high up in the chain of command. And there are a large number of the former lawmakers who are either in hiding or perhaps protection or have actually fled. So there seems to be a program of accountability. In terms of what's going to be replacing on the ground, in terms of the options that are there and the kind of political dynamics that are taking place, the negotiations that are taking place, what, in your opinion, is likely to be in the foreseeable future? Are we going to have a extended and protracted period of the present administration, or are we going to see elections in the immediate future?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball in front of me to be able to give an answer with any degree of accuracy. I can only say that what we need is some fundamental reforms in our electioneering process, in our governance process, and that may take a little time. I don't foresee immediate election. That will not solve our problem. It will be replacing one group of bad apple with another group of bad apple. We don't want to go back to that. We have experienced that, and we have suffered. We've all suffered in one form or the other. Because you see, our election system is such that it's a zero-sum game. The winner takes all, the loser loses all. And the cost of losing an election is so heavy that one does everything rightly or wrongly, well, more wrongly, and twists and turns the constitution or the electoral laws, choose choice of the election commission. The public trust in the election commission is below the knee. You know, it's so bad. I mean, look at India has a lot of problems, but at the end of the day, the public has trusted the electoral process. And we saw that in the last elections in India.
Allow me to...
This may take a little while. I don't know how long it will take and what are the reforms. I have a couple of ideas myself, which I'm talking to some people inside Bangladesh and outside, similar situations in their countries, how they managed it. I mean, the first place, we had 300, at the time of our birth in 1971, we had a population of 75 million, and we had 300 members of parliament. Now we have a population of 170 million, and still we have 300 members of parliament. Now look at your own country, Great Britain. You have a population of 65 million, and you have 652 members of the House of Commons. That makes it much more representative. Our system is not representative. 300 members of parliament could represent 75 million people. But 300 members of parliament, no way can look after 170 million people.
I suppose some of that might be down to the fact that in terms of the size of the territory, although the population is rather condensed and intense, uh, the fact that the members of parliament represent a particular territory mean that only so many members of parliament can be there. But if I can just go back to the metaphor that you use in terms of replacing one bad apple with another, can I just labor that, please, if I may, just for a moment? Are you suggesting that the Bangladeshi Nationalist Party was perhaps the larger of the parties that are out there? Are you suggesting that it's a bad apple?
I'm saying we have tested with both the political parties, and that has not worked. So I'm not saying that the party should be banned. No, of course, these are large parties. They have enough following. They should all contest election. So what happened in 2007, 2008, that experiment with the military did, was totally wrong. The military tried to reform the political parties. That was a very wrong approach. This time, the interim government, we should have real control over the situation, not the military like it did in 2007, 2008. Reform the process of elections, of governance. Why shouldn't we have bicameral legislature, for example? Why shouldn't we have proportional representation, for example? Why shouldn't we have provincial governments, for example? So you create a new structure under which all political parties, whether it is the BNP or the Awami League or any other political parties that are registered and that had not been against the 1971 War of Independence, should be allowed to take part in the election. So the problem is every political party or the major political parties only looks after their interest at preserving their interest, not the national interest at large. Yes, there has been development during the last 12 years. Undoubtedly, infrastructure development is very visible. But you would agree with me, Anwar, that development or jobless development is never durable. Or development in the absence of democracy is also not durable. Suharto did try to do that in Indonesia, it didn't work. Now Indonesia has a much more democratic system and they're developing at the same time because they have proper democracy in the country, very decentralized. Philippines had a lot of democracy in the days of Mr. Marcos. It didn't last. Pinochet gained the face of Chile with his development program, but in the process there was no democracy in Chile. Now I was in Chile for more than 3 weeks on a UN mission in 2010, and I saw how wonderfully democracy works in Chile. At the same time, they are the most developed in South America. So India is another example. Okay, India is not making huge economic gains like China, but India is making gains in development, in economy. There are now challenges, of course, everybody's facing challenges. But Indian democracy works, and that helps development, because development must touch every section of the people. In Bangladesh, only 5 or 3-4% of the people control 90% of the country's economy, country's banking, the country's insurance system. So how do you expect the least developed, the poor villages, who are actually the most marginalized, in spite of the fact that it is our farmers who feed us today? We are not a food deficit country, although our population has increased 3-fold since independence. Land has not increased because our farmers are creative, they're innovative, they find their own way, and the agriculture has been the most successful sector in Bangladesh. We talk of ready-made garment. They're providing our exports. Remittances are a huge source of, I call them an agent of change. The remittance sent by Bangladesh is working abroad in foreign countries, whether it is the Middle East, Europe, United States, Italy, Singapore, Malaysia, and everywhere. And so those are contributing factors. But the control of the economy is in the hand of only a small number of oligarchs. And that is where the major deficiency in Bangladesh has been. And this needs to be rectified over time. But for that, we must reform our politics, our election system. And within that structure, the political parties will have to work. That is how I see it. This is totally my personal view, Anwar.
Well, that's
how the interim government will do it, I do not know.
Well, that may require some constitutional amendments. It certainly is a bit of a hard task. But you raise, very importantly, the question of India. And I'm going to deal in a moment with the economic and strategic ties that Bangladesh has with India. But perhaps I could ask you rather, in terms of the geopolitical situation, is that not a worrying and testing time for India? Because at the moment, you have Bangladesh as the only neighbor who is not only sympathetic, but willing to do a lot of the bidding for India, whereas the rest of the neighbors are very volatile. And it's not just the immediate neighbors. So, for example, obviously the relationship with Pakistan is very volatile. You have a situation with China, who is trying to have some hegemony there, and there are a number of different factors in play. Bhutan is also a problem. The Maldives, you're aware of the fact that India is having some serious problems with the Maldives, and there are a number of different issues there. Bangladesh, which is a country which shares an incredibly large border, relatively speaking, with India, was the only country where there was immense cooperation. So much so that some people say that Bangladesh was a sort of a puppet of India, if you'll excuse the phrase. You have a large number of strategic and economic ties. What do you think is happening in Congress at the moment in terms of the minds of those players there about the volatile situation in Bangladesh and the likelihood that the Awami League party may not be holding the reins of Bangladesh for some time?
Well, you see, relations, and I've been a diplomat for 32 years.
Yes.
I've dealt extensively with India. And my point with all my Indian friends, and I really have very, very close friends in India with whom I can talk very candidly, very openly, and very objectively. I was in India very recently. In the 23rd of last month, I was in Delhi and meeting all sections of the Indian policymakers, think tanks, government people, outside the government people, former diplomats, etc., etc. You see, even there's a realization in India, which is now coming out slowly. Initially, parts of the Indian social media and some of the electronic media were rabid about the issue of how things now have gone wrong in Bangladesh, anarchism, etc., etc., etc. Bangladesh went through a revolution on, leading up to the 5th of August. And the aftermath of any revolution is chaotic. That happened with the French Revolution a couple of 100 years ago, happened with the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, happened with the Iranian Revolution much later. So we are now trying to come out of that chaotic period. Now, it is a relationship between two countries, is always a give and take. It's a matter of mutual benefit. So, and that I think India, I'm sure India realizes. Yeah. And that is why we have so much cooperation with India, so much connectivity with India, so many people traveling to India. But at the same time, you cannot ignore the deep pockets of China.
Sure. We'll come on to, forgive me, Mr. Chaudhry. We must go on to a short break. And when we come back, we will continue that conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, do stay tuned. When we come back, we'll carry on this discussion about the volatile situation in Bangladesh. Hope to see you shortly.
মেগাশপ মাসালা বাজার এখন গোডবেজ রিটেল পার্কে। শুরুতেই ক্রেতার আস্থা অর্জনে সফল, একসাথে নিত্য পণ্যের সমাহার মাসালা বাজার। প্রতি শনি ও রবিবার থাকছে মেগা সেল। সাধ্যের মধ্যে স্বাদ পূরণে আপনার পাশে মাসালা বাজার। কেনাকাটা শেষে ক্লান্তি দূর করতে মাসালা বাজারে প্রস্তুত চায়ের স্টল। হরেক রকম চায়ের সাথে রয়েছে মুখরোচক খাবার। গোডবেজ স্টেশন থেকে মাত্র 1 মিনিট দূরত্বে মাসালা বাজারে রয়েছে বিশাল গাড়ি পার্কিং সুবিধা। মাসালা বাজার মানে একের ভেতর 16 আনা। মাসালা বাজার, গোডবেজ রিটেল পার্ক, হাই রোড, রংফোর্ট, RM64 HX।
Follow your path. It's in you. Your life goal. Golden Dust, the new fragrance for women by Cinemusk.
Coming up next, Azan, brought to you by Islamic Relief.
When you give zakah, you are giving dignity. Give zakah with Islamic Relief now, for the sake of Allah. Give zakah for the sake of Allah, so those in need don't have to beg. It's Ahmed's right to basic food. It's Rua's right to life-saving medicine. And Ikhra's right to clean, safe water. It's his right, and hers, and theirs. When you give zakah, you are giving dignity. Give zakah with Islamic Relief now, for the sake of Allah.
Now, Azan, brought to you by Islamic Relief.
When you give zakah, you are giving dignity. Give zakah with Islamic Relief now, for the sake of Allah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة والدرجة الرفيعة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته وارزقنا شفاعته يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
হে আল্লাহ, এই পরিপূর্ণ আহ্বান এবং এই শাশ্বত নামাজের তুমি প্রভু। হযরত মুহাম্মদ সাল্লাল্লাহু আলাইহি ওয়াসাল্লামকে দান করো বেহেশতের সর্বোচ্চ সম্মানিত স্থান এবং সুমহান মর্যাদা, আর তাঁকে অধিষ্ঠিত করো শ্রেষ্ঠতম প্রশংসিত স্থানে, যার প্রতিশ্রুতি তুমি তাঁকে দিয়েছ। নিশ্চয়ই তুমি প্রতিশ্রুতির ব্যতিক্রম করো না।
This Azan was brought to you by Islamic Relief.
When you give zakah, you are giving dignity. Give zakah with Islamic Relief now, for the sake of Allah.
ক্রাউন ফার্মসের সেরা মাছের বিপুল সম্ভার এখন আপনার নিকটস্থ সুপার শপ মরিসনে পাওয়া যাবে 4টি নির্ধারিত মরিসনে। লিডস মরিসন সেন্টারে পাওয়া যাবে 22 জুলাই থেকে, ব্রাডফোর্ড ভিক্টোরিয়া মরিসনে 29 জুলাই, লিডস হানসেট মরিসনে 5 অগাস্ট এবং লন্ডন কুইন্সবারি মরিসনে পাওয়া যাবে 12 অগাস্ট থেকে। ক্রাউন ফার্মসের বাংলাদেশি মাছের স্বাদ নিন, উপভোগ করুন কিং প্রন এবং অনন্য স্বাদের বাচা ও তেলাপিয়া ফিলেটস। ক্রাউন ফার্মস মানে আপনার আস্থা। আজই নির্ধারিত মরিসনে বাজার করুন।
मिठाई तो होती ही निराला की है।
Al Haramain Madrasa and Quran schools for boys and girls certified by the Imam of Medina, teaching Quran, Arabic language, and Islamic studies. Study with Al Haramain Madrasa physically or online. Registration taking place now.
মর্গেজ পেমেন্ট নিয়ে চিন্তিত? ভাবছেন বাড়ির মালিক হওয়ার ঝামেলা? লাভান্টা নিয়ে এলো কো ওনারশিপের সুযোগ নিয়ে বাড়ির আংশিক বা পুরো বিক্রি করে হতে পারেন সম্পূর্ণ মর্গেজ ফ্রি। আছে মান্থলি রেন্টাল ইনকামের সুযোগ। সম্পূর্ণ ঝামেলাবিহীন এই নতুন ওনারশিপ মডেল আপনাকে করবে পুরোপুরি ঋণ মুক্ত। লাভান্টার এক্সপার্ট টিম আপনার প্রয়োজন অনুযায়ী অফার করবে আপনার জন্য জুৎসই ওনারশিপ প্যাকেজ। বিস্তারিত জানতে আজই ফোন করুন 0203 1054 533।
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. You're watching Let's Talk with me, Anwar Mir. And today we are discussing Bangladesh, a new chapter. With me to discuss Bangladesh are two guests. We have Mr. Shamsher Mubin Chowdhury, who's a former ambassador of a number of countries, including the United States of America. And we also have Dr. Gujan Jas, senior process engineer at Farmeron UK. Just before we went off air, we were talking to Mr. Chowdhury, and we were discussing the geopolitical situation. And just before we go back to that discussion, ladies and gentlemen, this is an interactive show. At the bottom of your screens, there is a telephone number. If you wish to participate in this program by sharing your views or indeed posing a question to any of our panel, please do call in, and we would love to hear what you have to say. Mr. Chowdhury, just before we went off air, I think we were discussing China, and we had to cut short.
Not just Bangladesh, but the whole of South Asia is strategically located, and within the competitive range of two major Asian powers, China and India. And China has become one of the, if not the largest, certainly the second largest economy of the world. It has a huge military. It has, I wouldn't say hegemonistic games, but it does have has of late adopted a more aggressive posture than it did when I was a diplomat in China in the late 1980s. There's the South China Sea dispute, perhaps, that affects China and all other countries in that region. China is claiming all of South China Sea, and building airports and building landing facilities for their ships and their aircrafts. And the Philippines, situation with Philippines and China, Vietnam and China, Brunei and China over the maritime boundaries, very, very serious. It cannot be ignored. And for this reason, there is a geopolitical issue between India and China. But India is not alone in this. The United States have a vested interest here, a geopolitical or geostrategic interest here, and that what they call the Indo-Pacific, Indo-Pacific security. And then there is Japan, which has now emerged as also a player. Now, Bangladesh has good relations with all of these countries. But it is always very, very difficult for a country like Bangladesh, which is not economically very powerful, which depends almost entirely on imported energy. which export basket is actually very small. The quantity may be big, but only ready-made garments. That's sort of 90% of our export ready-made garments. We do not have much diversity in that. And yet we are very strategically located, and because of our economic growth, population size growth, located at the top of Bay of Bengal, we have a relevance, and we are a country of consequence to all of these players. Now, we have demonstrated responsibility by allowing almost 1 million Rohingya refugees, and we are, having to bear keeping them, housing them in Bangladesh, posing a lot of domestic challenges also for us, and geopolitical challenges, potential geopolitical challenges. And the northeast of India has not been very stable. Now it's much better, but there was a time in northeast of India was a very disturbed part of the world, and that borders a great part of Bangladesh to our east. So we have seen what happened in Sri Lanka. You mentioned Sri Lanka, you mentioned Maldives, now Nepal is also playing up. So one says, and it's not my opinion by others, that India actually doesn't have a reliable neighbor. The only reliable neighbor is Bangladesh, number one. Number two, the only country with India can have extensive connectivity is Bangladesh. We are India's largest trading partner other than China. In South Asia, we're certainly India's largest trading partner.
Well, yes, that's right.
Country of 171 people.
Well, yes, that's right. I
Sorry.
mean, in terms of the significance of the relationship, the unique relationship that Bangladesh has with India and vice versa, the reality is that because of the instability in the current situation in Bangladesh, India may well be extremely concerned, very alarmed at what's going to happen. They certainly will be monitoring the situation very closely. You talk about the India being Bangladesh's biggest trade partner. Bilateral trade was $15.9 billion. India's Bangladesh's largest export destination. Bangladesh, you spoke about energy. Bangladesh imports 1,160 megawatts of power from India, and India has also extended $8 billion US dollars in credit for infrastructure. And the ties don't stop there, of course, because the strategic ties are also very serious. You take, for example, the railways corridor, the Akura and Agartala rail link. You also have the fact that India offered a line of credit for the railway structure, and also the fact that in addition to the Chittagong port, India has control over the Mongla port. So we seem to be very much joined at the hip. But to what extent do you say, or do you think, that's all in jeopardy? And should there be any risk to that sort of intensive relationship, it may well be, causing serious alarm in the corridors of India.
Well, actually, I personally feel that our relationship with India should be sustained in the manner that which it is, on the basis of mutual benefit and mutual respect. And this is something that I think India has also come to realize. And the visit of the former Prime Minister to Delhi last July, I think, laid out a lot of kind of a roadmap looking into the future. And most of it is actually very positive. It's long on substance too. But then there are other issues, sharing of the waters of our common rivers. We don't have that much of an issue with that with any other country. I mean, yes, the Brahmaputra, we may have some issues with China, but we share 54 rivers with India. And we have the agreement on sharing of that river water is the Ganges water, which comes up for renewal in 2 years' time. Now, what will happen to that renewal thing? When former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina visited India, there was an announcement made that a technical team from both sides will start working on the renewal. How it will be renewed? Will it be renewed with the existing parts in it? Or will India take a different look? Because India also needs water. But an international water is an international water. And every country that the river passes has an equal right. And one has to look at it that way. I mean, I was ambassador in Germany, and the Rhine River and the Danube, they pass through multiple countries, and they have excellent arrangements how this water is being shared by these countries. The Canada-US is another wonderful, example of best practice. There are more than 100 something rivers between Canada and the United States, and they have issues with none of them. Yes,
No.
there are other bad examples. The Tigris and Euphrates between Turkey, Iraq, and the countries, and also between Brazil and Argentina. Well, but let us look at the good example. We are a very heavily populated country. We are heavily dependent on agriculture. We are heavily dependent on irrigation system. And because of the fluctuated availability of water, too much for us during the rainy season, too little for us during the dry season. So we have to come to an arrangement where, we get a fair share. I'm not saying we should get more than our fair share, but we should get a fair share. Why can't we have agreement on more rivers? And this is, I think, an issue that India needs to address very, very seriously. I'm very supportive of the growth of connectivity. I'm very supportive of the growth of trade. $8 billion of line of credit that India has given. Only 21% of that has so far been utilized. Why is that? And when I was in Delhi recently, Indian officials or former officials were complaining that the problem is actually more in Delhi than in Dhaka. The bureaucratic nature of disbursement of funds is so complex, so complicated, so outdated. Going days to the British Raj, where everything needs 25 signatures, and that I think needs to be India. I think should have a special arrangement for quick disbursement of the funds for projects that help Bangladesh. What have they done so far have not been bad. They have been good. The railway is a good example. India's involvement has been very helpful. There are many others. Could be in the health sector, India should get involved. There's a lot of comparative situation between India and Bangladesh, much more with India and Bangladesh than between Bangladesh and China. But China has deep pockets. But when Prime Minister went to Beijing in the last visit, I get the impression that, that was not a very happy visit for the Bangladesh side. I think China held back on a lot of things. So at one time, China promised $27 billion again. Not much of that has been utilized. So one has to look at that the disbursement of lines of credit from India are transparent and are properly used. And that will, energize nature relationship. The people-to-people contact between Bangladesh and India is naturally very good. You can, from Sylhet, you can cross over the number of areas they can just walk across to India legally, not illegally. And there are, system needs a lot of improvement. A lot of work needs to be done. I had used those routes quite frequently, and I find it's not really, the quality is not up to date, and that should, you can have connectivity, but important is to have seamless connectivity. And I always said we should have a situation where I can have breakfast in Agartala, lunch in Dhaka, and a late dinner in Kolkata within the same day.
Well,
that's the kind of connectivity we should have. We have not reached anywhere near that.
That sounds very lovely, and so on and so forth. But the fact is, I mean, you touched on a number of things, and these bring me back to the point about the relationship between Bangladesh and India. You mentioned the fact that there was a sort of maybe not a hostile reception in China by the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, but certainly things did not go very smoothly. To what extent was that, in your opinion, Mr. Chowdhury, down to the fact that the terminal rights to the Mongla port were given to India rather than China? And if that was the case, if that's the reason, was it worth it? Surely, where you have a bloc such as China, who is potentially of greater benefit to Bangladesh, rather than, say, India, where the relationship with India is already cordial, does it really need to intensify that at the cost of alienating China?
No, I don't think we should have a relationship one at the cost of the other. We should try to maximize
which is what happened.
relationship.
But that's exactly what happened. The visit to China was cut short simply because of the fact that the frost.
Was it only Mongla, or was it something else? I do not know. Apparently the Prime Minister made a statement that China also has made an offer on a proposal for the Teesta water conservation and management. But then she said India has made an offer, so I'm going to take the Indian offer. Was the Chinese upset with that? I could be. China doesn't have any of the ports management. The Matabari port, which is being built, which is a strategic port, is the only deep sea port we have in Bangladesh. That is being built by the Japan, by Japan.
But either way, what it sheds light on is the fact that Bangladesh seems to be very much, to use the colloquial phrase again, perceived as a bit of a puppet situation as regards India, because it seems to be the case that whatever India is demanding or seeking, Bangladesh is delivering. My question to you is regards that is this: aside from the fact that we have an interim administration in place, which is very likely to be very diplomatic, so to speak, in relation to the prospect of, say, if the Bangladeshi Nationalist Party was to take the reins, what do you think will happen in terms of the affinity between Bangladesh and India vis-a-vis that relationship with Pakistan? Because there is a perception and some whispers that... Sorry, go ahead.
No, you finish your question.
Okay, I was just going to say that there are some suggestions that there is an inclination that the BNP is more aligned to, say, Pakistan than it would be towards India. To what extent is that accurate, or is that simply a rumor, nothing more?
No, that's not accurate. You see, Pakistan is too far off, and Pakistan is not in a position to offer any economic assistance to Bangladesh. They're in a very, very bad state themselves, politically, economically, and geostrategically. So, that's not the case. The question is, how does our relationship with India merge? You see, the feeling in India is, right now, after the 5th of August change of the situation, that India should actually learn to engage all sides in Bangladesh, all sides of the political spectrum in Bangladesh. I'm not saying about the religious groups, but normal centrist political parties, that they should not automatically see them as inimical to India's interest.
Okay.
A former Indian ambassador to Pakistan, I was listening to his comments on talk show in India. Very seasoned diplomats, academics, and there, and he was saying that we should stop looking at Bangladesh from the prism of Pakistan and China. We are strong enough, confident enough to look at on our own, engage all sides. I had told my Indian friends, not now, but many years ago, that you cannot make friends with half the people. And you should not do politics with relationship with a party. You should do with the people of the country. And that is the perception in Bangladesh, that it has not happened. And this is made worse by the killing in the borders.
Yeah.
India shares a border with Nepal.
Yeah.
How many Nepalese get killed by the Indian BSF? And see how many Bangladesh
Good
by the Indian BSF.
Good point.
And those are issues that really hurt people in Bangladesh. Okay, we are great. We have a history. We have geography on our side. We have culture on our side. Why are people, if the people are doing illegal business, are they doing on their own, or is there not also a conduit in the Indian side? But it is the Bangladeshi who ends up dead. So these are things that India needs to address. You see, in 2011, then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, a perfect gentleman, committed that the border killing will be reduced to zero. It is now 13 years since then. It is nowhere near zero. Keeps on fluctuating. Why should there be even one? If he's crossed illegally, has done some illegal business, by all means arrest him. Try him, put him in jail, and then deport him, like you do with Sri Lanka.
Yes,
many would say
that there's a gulf of difference between Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and Prime Minister Modi. Let me bring in Dr. Rafiq Hassan Jinnah, who's a retired orthopedic surgeon and a Communist Party of Bangladesh politician. Dr. Jinnah, thank you for joining us. May I please ask you, what is your take on the current circumstances in Bangladesh?
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's short notice, but I just observed from what happened in Bangladesh pretty closely, like most of the citizens of Bangladesh and who are living abroad. And from the beginning, when the problem started, or the demand by the students started, we noticed that the existing government during that time were not responsive to the situation. Rather, they took, in a completely dismissive way, the strength of the students. And later, what happened, everybody knows, and there was an uprising by the people. and against not only that particular issue, but the other issues also came forward, and that ultimately, because of the autocratic rule by the last government, and the change has taken place. And this is, in a modern time, the most unprecedented situation in Bangladesh, that the students did what the politician could do, either by the opposition BNP or by any other group. So it was really the victory of the student activists, taking on board the people of Bangladesh. Now, the situation is in such a way that a new interim government has been formed under the guidance of the Nobel laureate, and the people saw the glimmer of hope that that there will be a new way of looking at the future of Bangladesh. But the situation has turned out to be very critical for the country. The law and order situation, particularly the destruction of, by the hooligans, I would put it the word hooligans, the main principal representation of the country's war of independence being attacked. The minority communities have been targeted, although most of the people believe that it is an approach by the extreme right of the Bangladesh. And now the question is now coming up that what is the intention of this interim government for the future? Are they going to stay here for a long time? And there is a perception among many people that it is not an interim as such, that they will be handing over power to the elected government in very near future. That kind of uncertainty has also created a suspicion among the people of Bangladesh.
All right.
So,
all right. Just before we carry on, I've got a caller who is online. Perhaps I should take the call. Hello, caller.
Assalamu alaikum.
Sam, you're live on air. What would you like to say?
I wanted to make a contribution in this talk show.
Go ahead.
We are highly delighted and extremely pleased to say that at the cost of thousands of lives, our country has been liberated from the class of tyrannic and ruthless political regime of the previous government. Now the question is that BNP has started facing serious challenge since last 1/11, and Shamsher Mubin Saheb was one of the prominent figure of one of the pioneering initiative of the BNP. Why has he left BNP in this frustrated situation? Number two, the level of atrocities, level of human rights violation, and level of constitutional violation, level of crimes that Hasina has committed has definitely surpassed, superseded, exceeded every dimension. Every parameter.
Well, caller, let me just clarify one or two things. I think it's unfair to actually ask somebody a personal question as to what was behind their intention of moving or actual move from one party to another. I think in terms of the activities of the Awami League government, it is fair to say, although they're not here, and I think in fairness I should say, that the economy of Bangladesh at the helm of the Awami League, at the helm of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, has done incredibly well, unprecedented levels. You have a great nation, very developed. We've gone in leaps and bounds. In comparison to our neighboring countries, it's politically, relatively speaking, less volatile than it is in, say, Pakistan or even in India, Burma, Nepal. Bangladesh has actually done incredibly well. Now, it isn't without its faults, but in fairness to the Awami League government, I should say, the Awami League Party rather, I should say that there have been a lot of achievements, a lot of successful achievements by Sheikh Hasina and her government. I think the caller's gone, but perhaps I should just go back to. Oh, the caller's still there. Hello, caller. Hello, caller. Right, I think they have gone. I think if I just go back to our panelists, and in particular Dr. Jinnah. Dr. Jinnah, the caller seemed to be very concerned about Bangladesh in terms of what's happened before. Would you agree with him, or would you say that there have been significant achievements, leaps and bounds, as I put it, by the former administration, albeit there are certain problems that were faced there as well?
Can I just justify that what you say, that there were lots of development and that undeniable progress in the country?
Yeah.
I would like to, during the last regime, I want to just put a pinch of salt in there. Was it a progress, or it is just few infrastructure development that was impressive indeed from external eyes, but the whole country went into a negative situation as far as the moral development of the people. So you cannot call it the progress. It was lots of buildings, lots of communication facilities being improved, but the country went retrograde as far as the moral perspective of the country. The country created lots of what we call lumpen bourgeoisies. They were looting the country, and the administration went into such a corrupt situation that it was intolerable for the people. So I would reconsider the word progress and development.
But you see, it's difficult, Dr. Jinnah, it is difficult to actually measure a country's success in terms of morality. How does one compare that, for example, with America? Some might argue that corruption is rife in America, particularly at the very highest levels. Even, in fact, in the United Kingdom, we have the levels of corruption that we've seen with the previous administration, the scandals that we've seen with the PPE equipment during COVID, a lot of the contracts and so on and so forth. People are suggesting that they may not be as transparent as they should have been. Whereas in terms of measurement of a country's success, a lot of people might argue that economic success is the way to measure a country's achievements and advancements. And it's not necessarily the fact that there's cosmetic improvements, because in terms of the economy, yes, cosmetically, you might say bridges and flyovers and so on and so forth, and even an overhead railway may well be cosmetic. But economically, the country is extremely strong. The currency is strong. The job situation is strong.
I beg your pardon. The currency is not strong. The currency is very, very, very weak.
Well, in comparison to,
I mean, come on.
In comparison to countries
who
such as,
told you the currency is strong?
Well, in comparison to countries such as,
has gone down.
in comparison to countries such as, well, no, in terms of whether or not it's gone down or not, that's different. But in comparison to neighboring countries,
it's still going down. Anwar, it is still going down.
In comparison to countries such as Pakistan, the economy.
Two wrongs don't make it right. I not compare myself with a failed state.
Well, no, but you must.
Look at Bangladesh on my own.
But you must, because the thing is, in terms of the challenges that a country faces, neighboring countries face similar challenges, not just geopolitical, but all sorts of other challenges, particularly by international factors. And therefore, it's quite right to compare like for like. But in terms of what's happening in Bangladesh, I mean, I accept the point that there was corruption. But the point I was making was that corruption is not unique and exclusive, mutually exclusive to Bangladesh. Corruption happens in a number of countries. My question to you, Dr. Jinnah, is that you say that the developments and the advancements in Bangladesh are cosmetic, superficial, and of no significance. That's not fair, is it?
No, I didn't say that. It is the cosmetics. There are a little bit of trickling down advantages to the common people of Bangladesh. If you
I think there's a technical issue with Dr. Shina. Let me just go back to, and perhaps I should bring in Dr. Daz.
Every aspect
Dr. Shina.
we didn't do well.
Yeah.
The only things they were showing like that of that that this metro rail, this bridges on the Jamuna River or on the river and all these things. Well, there is a trickling effect to the common people. The gap between the rich and the poor is astronomical. So how can you take any international index? Now we talk about sometimes the GDP. Well, if the GDP of Bangladesh is that amount of money, let us tell me how many people have got the share of that GDP development. Only few people, only small percentage of the population are measured with the most lots of the have-nots.
Well, the redistribution of wealth, but the redistribution of wealth is another argument. It is fair to say that the GDP reaching levels of 6, 7, 8%, 6, 7, 8% in comparison to neighboring countries is in fact a remarkable achievement. But in terms of the redistribution of wealth, that's probably a leftist argument, and perhaps for another day. But Dr. Das, may I just bring you back in terms of the situation that you see taking place on the ground at the moment? Can your community be assured of the fact that people such as Nobel laureate Professor Yunus have set out what he says is that no stone will be left unturned in making sure that the rights of minorities are protected, that he and the people around him are committed to making sure that there's equal rights for minorities? I mean, you will accept, won't you? You'll agree with me that certainly as far as the Bangladeshi community, the British Bangladeshi community in the UK, the relationship within or between the Muslim British Bangladeshis and the Hindu British Bangladeshis is actually very cordial and very warm.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's much warmer in the UK than it is, I could think it is in Bangladesh right now.
Do you take comfort from the fact that there are comments and initiatives by Professor Yunus and his administration to say that they will make sure that they'll do whatever they can to ensure that the volatility there is reduced?
So from what I'm seeing on the news right now, for the first time, I'm quite pleased to see the fact that they are taking actions and what is going to happen in the future. Like the first statement that was made, and he's also visited a couple of temples to find out what's going on. And I think earlier I was speaking to someone this evening that Professor Yunus actually visited the temple in Dhaka.
He did, yeah.
To double check
Yes, he did.
whether the news was actually that was spread out, whether it was true or fake. So after hearing and seeing all of that, I have full hope that he can bring in change and minorities will no longer be attacked. And to be precise, Hindus, I do not like the idea of being labeled as minority for a country that's become free a week ago. It's a free country where everyone should have equal rights to live in freedom, be it a Hindu, Christian, Buddhist, or a Muslim person.
I think the word minority is often used to describe the extent or the size in numerical terms of the contingent of the community that you belong to, rather than to demean your community in any way. But thank you for that. Let me just go back to Mr. Chowdhury. Mr. Chowdhury, in terms of the future, what does the future hold? Because the likelihood is that the largest party that is going to be having any semblance of credibility is going to be the BNP party. Because at the moment, it seems to be the case that the Awami League are effectively wiped out. Their leadership has not only fled, but they're being captured. It seems to be the case that they're going to be facing long trials and possible incarceration. Do you foresee a BNP government or a coalition government in any event? What does the future hold for Bangladesh?
I can't say who's going to form the government until we have an election time schedule announced.
Yes, of course, I accept that. Forgive me, I accept that. But what I'm basically saying is that
we'll have to wait for that.
No,
my question of addressing the minority situation in Bangladesh. Now, in the UK, the monarch, until very recent, I think, was also known as the protector of the faith. Which faith? The United Kingdom is a country of multiracial and multi-faith, but crown is called the head of the Church of England and a protector of the faith. Which faith?
Sure.
The American president takes oath of office. Just let me finish, Anwar.
Okay.
The American president takes oath of office on the Bible. He doesn't take oath of office. In our country, our presidents, prime ministers, ministers don't take oath of office on a religious book. They take oath of office on the Constitution. I think Bangladesh is inherently far more non-criminal than any of the Western countries. I have served as ambassador in Germany, where the ambassador of the Vatican is automatically designated as the head of the diplomatic corps just because he represents a church, and that to only the Catholic Church. In Bangladesh, the ambassador of Saudi Arabia is not automatically the senior most diplomat. The senior diplomat is the one who has been the longest, and that can be the ambassador from Poland or ambassador from Czech Republic or Australia, whatever. So when we talk of in Bangladesh, Eid, Christmas, Durga Puja, and Buddha Purnima, and Dr. Jinnah will agree with me, are national holidays. The UK has a large number of Muslim population. Is Eid a national holiday in Great Britain? Only Christmas.
I think, with respect, Mr. Chaudhry, I really don't want to go off on a tangent, and I appreciate that there's a piece of the jigsaw in respect of the faith issue, the religious issue. But going back to my original question, bearing in mind the reality, the likelihood that the key figures within the Awami League are unlikely to be participating in any meaningful way in any future election, it's quite clear that the Bangladesh Nationalist Party will play a significant, if not the sole role of heading a future administration. What does that look like in your view?
Well, let us not go into...
No, I appreciate that, but the reality on the ground is that that's where... I appreciate that there is no crystal ball. Forgive me for interrupting you. I appreciate...
To ensure if we have a fair election under a non-party caretaker government, Awami League is a big party. It's a very old party.
So you're not writing it off just yet?
But I don't think the Bangladesh people want to see only one party. I mean, the Communist Party of Bangladesh has excellent people in its cadre. I mean, Mujahid Salim, Dr. Jinnah would know, is my class friend. I have great respect for him. In fact, in the recent situation, he was the first political leader to come on public television and say the prime minister should resign, long before even the students had demanded. So, okay, the communist parties have not been successful in administering countries in most of the countries in the world. But the fact remains that if you have a proper, fair election, and if you have a system of election where you have a proportional representation in the first past the post system, then you may end up having coalition that can.
But that's when we go into speculation. The reality is that we don't have PR, a system of PR in Bangladesh. What we do have is a system very similar to the United Kingdom. So the fact remains, and this is the reality.
We should change that in Bangladesh.
But that's a different. That's a different debate. Mr. Chaudhry, that's a different debate.
Sri Lanka has proportional representation.
That's a different debate, and it's not for today.
Mr.
Chaudhry, that is, with respect, a different debate, and it's not for today. My question remains: much as you say that parties such as the Communist Party have good people, in my humble opinion, there are good people across the board throughout in most of the parties. But in terms of the reality, you're saying that you don't write off the Awami League just yet. And you say that they may play a significant part, and they may play a significant part in the forthcoming elections. Is that what you're saying?
As and when it happens, yes. As and when it happens, it can. So we should have bicameral legislation.
No, it's not about
have a bicameral legislation like India.
But it's not about what we should have. It's about what we'd like to have in line with the. Do you foresee? My final question to you, please, because we're coming to the end of the show. Do you foresee a return to politics of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina?
I don't foresee anything at this moment. I want to see a major fundamental reform in our political structure, in our election structure. That is what I want to see. I'm not going to foresee which party should form the next government. That would be unfair on my part to say that.
Very well.
I don't rule anybody out. I think everybody should have. So we must have a PR system. We must have a bicameral legislature. And I hope Dr. Jinnah would agree with me.
You have the last say. Unfortunately, my apologies to the rest of the panelists, Dr. Jinnah and Dr. Das. We're out of time. Thank you very much, all three of you, for joining us today and giving up your valuable time. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the show for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Keep us all in your prayers. And of course, keep Bangladesh in your prayers. A great nation that needs to remain great. And we wish it the very best. Thank you for watching. Salam alaikum.
Mega sale at Masala Bazaar from July 22nd to 28 at Masala Bazaar in Small Heath, Perry Bar, and Smethwick, Birmingham. Enjoy incredible discounts of 20 to 40% on a wide range of products, including frozen fish, fresh meat, spices, seasonal fruits, and fresh vegetables. Spend £100 and receive a free Rui fish. Discover unbeatable prices. Enjoy our extensive car parking facilities. Don't miss out. Shop smart at Masala Bazaar.